That's bad planning.
Good evening. Welcome to the April 14th, 2014 City of Joliet Pre-Council meeting. Mayor Tom Durrani presiding.
Thank you.
Start with roll call. Mayor Durrani.
Here.
Councilman Girl.
Here.
Councilman Tug.
Here.
Councilman McFarland.
Here.
Councilman Morris.
Here.
Councilman Odeker.
Here.
Councilwoman Quillman. Here. Councilman Turk.
Here.
Jim.
Thank you, Mayor. We have a fairly routine agenda here, but I want to direct your attention to a few items. Item 164 is position vacancies. As you know, part of what was approved in the budget was a new inventory of our forestry throughout the city. And it includes the purchase of software, and then we're also looking to hire 4 positions. These would predominantly be college students during the summertime, paying $10 an hour. They will have the software with them to go out and actually do the physical inventory. We're doing recruitments, focusing at colleges in the area and universities, students that are in horticultural programs, forestry programs, and arborist type majors. The second one is a retirement. It's an account clerk position in the fire department.
Any questions? Jim?
Under public hearings, we've got annexation over on Briggs Street, and it's a petitioner that's looking to locate the Burkott Superfoods and property for warehouse and distribution to the site. Part of the, it'll be remodeling of an existing building and constructing an addition of 20,000 square feet in the rear of the building. We've got some provisions there. One of the things is that we're waiving the sewer connection fee as a concession to allow the public utility and drainage easement to be located on their property. It's also in the East Joliet Fire Protection District, and they paid a detachment fee that's related to that in order to annex to the city of Joliet. Any questions?
Any questions on that? Jim?
Then we have, under ordinances, item 167, which is asking you to authorize another year on the fire eligibility list. And this is the list that takes quite a bit of time and effort and expense. And there are enough candidates on there at this point that we think it should last another year, and it should save the city an estimated $40,000 in additional costs.
Comments?
Quick question.
Sure.
Jim, what would the age of this list be then? 2 years old?
2 years old, yeah.
And
It's one right now, and it would extend it 1 year. So you get beyond 2 years and it's a little stale, and most of your candidates have moved on or they've been hired by other fire departments anyways.
Okay, thank you.
plus I think we can only extend it once now. The law has been changed, so, yeah.
And I have just a
Sure.
question. Jim, could you tell us how the savings on that by extending it for your cost saving?
It's nearly
Public.
$40,000.
40?
40,000, yes.
So this is the only time we'll get 2 years out of it. And when was the law changed?
Ben, do you know the answer?
Was it? Okay.
Wasn't it right after we approved the extension of that other list?
The
2011 or 12?
the state of Illinois changed the police and fire board rules with promotions anyway during the pendency of our last list. And as a part of that, they preempted home rule and now applied the hiring rules to all cities in the state, not just non-home rules.
And that allowed us to go 1 additional year then?
Right.
Okay,
Right.
thank you.
Okay, Jim?
Item 168 is an amendment to our city weed ordinance, and this will change a few provisions. Number one, I think the existing ordinance only referenced weeds rather than grass as well, so we wanted to make sure grasses, if you let your lawn with grass grow too long, we'll still go out and cut it. But it also allows rain gardens and natural native plantings as part of that, so. Item 175, or actually, let's go back to resolutions. Item 171 is a sale of property located on Buck Avenue. This is another property that's been renovated, that the purchaser is getting assistance and will be able to create another new homeowner in our community. 172 is the authorizing the purchase of 320 South Des Plaines Street, which is a property that through foreclosure will come to the city at a nominal amount. And then Council Memo number 175 is a resolution of support for legislation that Larry Walsh Jr. is sponsoring in Illinois, and although I have it listed as House Bill 5889, it's probably not going to end up that number because it's the iterations that go around and round and go back and forth. But the point of this is it will allow the Will County Board to establish between a $15 and $30 fee for all legal cases filed in the court that would be directed towards construction solely for a new court building. So this just gives the board the right to do so. And I think it's important as a new courthouse in downtown. I think the entire council can agree on that that's important to the future of our downtown. We should get behind this draft legislation and give it whatever support we can.
Mayor?
Question, sure.
Jim, do we have any idea, or does the county have any idea, have they ran any numbers as far as the amount of additional revenue that this legislation could generate?
I really, I thought I heard over $2 million, but even saying so,
Okay.
I haven't heard anything definitive.
I'm just curious as far as what type of dollars we're talking about.
Right.
If I may, last week, Chief Judge Shainstead was speaker at the Joliet Area Chamber, and I think he said $2 to $3 million or something like that, that this would raise.
Right.
Yeah.
But every little bit helps.
Oh, yes.
Right.
The next item that I've got to talk about is 189. And this has to do with the award of the contract for the Joliet multimodal bid package, our Heritage Corridor tunnels. And what I want to point out to you is that this is over 50% higher than our engineer's estimate. And the reason for that, predominantly, however, we feel very comfortable that it's a highly competitive, that this number is correct, because as you can see, we had two bidders, and we're only $30,000 apart on a $1.4 million bid here. And what we're really paying for here is the fact that there is such a limited time that the trains can be out of service while this tunnel is going underneath. And the other reason that it's so far off of the estimate is that we were just given, when this project started, everybody was just estimating the scope of work that was going to be involved in this entire project. And as it has evolved, we have found that we're low on some areas, high on others, but it has required adjustments, and that's where I also want to direct you Council Memo 191, which is also an additional amount of $175,500 to Knight Engineering for professional engineering services on the multimodal transportation center as well. Again, the scope changes through the machinations of two private sector train freight companies, Metra and Amtrak, and as best we can, we're trying to stay ahead of it. I plan at the next pre-council meeting to do a complete overview of the multimodal program for you, including the budget and where we are, so you can see where our estimates truly are at this point. So,
Questions?
Yeah, I have a question. So Jim, you don't have any kind of indication how this would, these two increases will affect the multimodal budget? I mean, because if we're going to vote on this tomorrow, it'd be nice to know how it's affecting the budget. Is it staying within budget?
well, the budget's a fluid document too, in terms of as we have cost overruns, what we're finding we have to do is to go back and value engineer some of the future projects to make sure that we stay within our budget. So we've got budget dollars, and we run into these things where there are cost overruns. We look at the future projects and say, where can we save that money so that we can stay within our budget? So, and this is just the beginning. We're starting construction soon on the temporary platform, and then we'll begin construction on the actual new train station, followed by the new bus station. And in the end, we'll have a new train station, a new bus station, new parking, and complete ownership for whatever use of the Union Station. Now, our plan was to have money for renovation of the Union Station, but depending upon what money is left, we may have to spread out that renovation over a longer period of time. I also want to make sure you're involved in some of the financial decision-making where we say, we're either going to have to cut this bus project, we have to cut this project down, and here's how we're going to do it to save money, but this is how it's going to look versus how we had originally planned. And so we have to make those decisions, which are financial, but as well as aesthetic, for how we want our new bus station and the new train station to look to the community.
Have we come up with a preliminary maintenance and upkeep budget?
No, we haven't, because we're still in discussions with Metra and Amtrak in terms of responsibility within that new station, which will determine what our maintenance costs will be.
Thanks, Joe.
Sure.
Anybody else? Jim?
Well, that's really all I had to review this evening. The Public Service Committee will met earlier, and they'll report on their items tomorrow evening. We do have two citizens to be heard this evening.
Okay.
If we're ready at that point.
Sure.
Mr. Hernandez.
I have
I'm
an
sorry.
agenda item.
Sure.
Jim, I'd like to ask the council to table memo 168-14, the ordinance amending the city's weed ordinance, until that goes through the land use and legislative committee.
We'll have to do that tomorrow night.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if there's no objection, I think it should come through the committee, especially, we are designated as a green city. It'd be kind of nice to get a little input on what we're trying to do and highlight the initiatives that we're taking. Nobody objects to that.
And I think we also, there wasn't a quorum for our Public Service Committee meeting, but I was able to review the contracts with staff, and I don't know the number, I'm looking for it here, but I think we want to table for 2 weeks also the well maintenance contract. I'm trying to see what number that is.
188-14, I believe.
And we'll have to do that tomorrow night, too.
Okay.
What was it, Jim?
I believe it's 188-14.
This one here, water supply maintenance?
Yes, 188,
Is
yeah.
that correct?
For discussion.
Okay. Citizens to be heard. Robert?
Good evening, members of the City Council. I spoke the last couple of meetings, and there's been a huge discussion with respect to Evergreen Terrace, and I wanted to talk today about the future of our city. I'm 52 years old, and I remember the first council meeting that I was really involved in. I was 16, and we were working with Richard Reinhardt's class at Joliet West High School to get the Oneida Street extension. I think one of the things our future needs is young leadership. If you look to your left, you have Mr. McFarland, who's in his 30s, Mr. Odekirk, and Mr. Hugg, who are in their 40s. I think that's the future of our city. And I like the questions that they ask after each and every meeting when they question items on the budget. That's what people are elected to do. This is not the Stedford Council where everybody says aye at the same time and agrees on every issue. There should be some disagreement. With respect to Evergreen Terrace, again, I'll reiterate that I hope that the citizens who live there are taken into consideration with whatever decision this city council in the future decides to make. I also believe in our police department, that the reason that the crime has gone down is because of the proactive approach of the police department. What they did last summer in downtown Joliet, I'd spoken with the chief. I mean, you couldn't walk downtown at the beginning of the summer without seeing vagrants and people drinking and asking for money, panhandling, and the chief did an aggressive, proactive action toward the end of the summer and eliminated that problem. And I think he's done a tremendous job in bringing crime down in some of our dense areas. I have a lot of strong faith in our police department, and I think Mr. Odekirk believes the same thing. That's why you have strong support from the police unions and the officers that actually work on the street. So I think our future of our city is with our young people. And it's time that we look to the future. And I make no bones about it. That's one of the reasons why I'm supporting Mr. Odekirk, because he's a young man, and I knew him in the 90s when he worked as a police officer underneath my father, and I worked with Louise Ray, and I was in a housing authority, and he was a police officer assigned to the Forest Park Community Center, or to the Forest Park Community Area, and he did a tremendous job in working with the young people up there and resolving a lot of problems. And I like his approach. He asks questions. You know, he thinks for himself, and that's what we need. We need people that we elect to public office that are independent, that ask questions, and that ask for answers. And you have a good city manager who responds well. Again, I love this city. I'm 52. I was born and raised here like my father before me. My aunt will turn 92 in May. She was born in Joliet. We have a long history here. My grandfather came as an immigrant, paid 15 cents to come to this country legally back in 1907. So we have a strong history here in Joliet. I love this city, and I hope nothing but the best for this city. Thank you, Your Honor, and members of the council.
Is Robert here? He signed up. No.
I don't believe he's here.
Okay. Any comments, discussions?
You know, real quick, where are we at on the strategic plan, Jim?
The strategic plan will be presented to you at the next regular council meeting.
2 weeks from
Yes.
tomorrow. Thank you.
First meeting in May.
Okay, because I know we got to look at some of the levels and some of the departments of their services having been cut over the last few years
Certainly.
and down.
Anybody else? Just a quick update on U.S. Steel. As we all know, city's been trying to work with U.S. Steel and IPA to get that cleaned up so we can develop it. City manager and myself met with Doug Willett, who's a professional environmental and energy services and a real estate broker. And Mr. Willett has a client that buys brown sites as is and cleans them and redevelops them. That group met with U.S. Steel, and they could not come to an agreement over the project, the price of the project. Recently, the city received the correspondence from U.S. Steel. They're looking for a groundwater ordinance to proceed at U.S. Steel. Mr. Hock knew an attorney that handles that out of Chicago, contacted him. That attorney sent U.S. Steel a letter stating that he will be representing us and that they are going to pay for all his fees and all the fees that we acquire for this study. And he is also going to ask for freedom of information on the property to see exactly how bad bad a shape it is. So right now, that's where we're at. He sent that letter to him, and he also sent a copy of the contract with his hourly rates for them to sign and send back. So we're just waiting to hear from U.S. Steel. Jim, you want to add anything to?
Other than, I know the council's been really concerned about economic development, which is the case, but also I think we've got a neighborhood concern as well to make sure that the groundwater, when you're asking for a groundwater ordinance, basically that's asking the city to adopt an ordinance that residents can't drill a well within so many feet of a potentially contaminated site. And it requires borings and testing throughout the perimeter, which we believe has already been done and submitted to IEPA. And so we're looking for that information, and we will hire environmental engineers to review those reports to make sure that the safety of the residents is first and foremost. And as long as they meet all of those requirements, then we can adopt that groundwater. And right now, we don't allow wells to be drilled for potable water at all in any case throughout the city. And so, again, the concern of the neighborhoods are first and foremost.
I believe the request for the groundwater ordinance was for an NFR, no further remediation on the property. So before we can go through that, we want them to pay for all these studies that have to be done.
Remediation is defined by EPA at different levels. It has to be cleaned to a certain extent if you're going to continue it for industrial use, commercial use, a parking lot, or residential. So depending upon what type of use U.S. Steel is asking for, this industrial zone site will determine what kind of remediation or no further remediation that's required on the site.
I believe in the contact we had with the IEPA, they told us that we could give them an NFR for the front section along Collins Street, provided they put buildings on it and blacktop over it, and they could get one for that. But it just says they're looking for NFR. I'm not sure if that's for all of it or just for the front of it or whatever. So that's where we're at.
We'll see.
Yes, right. That's all I have. Anything else?
One more thing, Mayor.
Sure.
I don't know if this should go to the fire chief or Jim Egan in Public Services. I had a couple residents contact me regarding their fire hydrants being out of service, and I did a little inquiring on that with some fire personnel. It's to my understanding that the city's got in the hundreds of fire hydrants that are out of service. I was wondering if we can get a report back to Public Service on a plan to get those back online, what it would take to get them operable.
Yeah, we'd be able to put something like that together for you, bring it back to public service. Typically, we allocate our crews between water main breaks and other emergency work to do the maintenance work, which includes replacing fire hydrants. And we always take a look at working with the fire department, making sure that we don't have two fire hydrants side by side, that are out of service or that there isn't a critical facility nearby.
I'd just like to see some type of timeline and plan.
Okay.
Because it's out there in the community, and I think people want to feel safe that if their structure is on fire or something nearby, that there's going to be water.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
It's a motion and seconded to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned.